Hello everybody and welcome back to Beyond the Veil. I'm Brett Rogers and as always I'm joined by Lee Wise.
Good evening.
And tonight we are not recording from a studio. Well, we don't usually record from a studio anyway.
Very grandiose.
Yeah, we just record out of our bedroom.
Brett's bedroom.
Indeed.
It's not our bedroom.
Well, no. Thanks for clarifying on that one. So anyway, we are inside one of the most infamous and historical significant locations in East Yorkshire, a place where history, tragedy and paranormal have become deeply intertwined. Fort Paull. Standing on the northern bank of the Humber Estuary, the fort has watched over the river for generations. Originally built as a coastal defence against the threat of invasions, its walls have witnessed war, isolation, fear and loss stretching back centuries. Soldiers once patrolled these corridors, families lived within the walls, and over the years countless visitors have claimed that something else still remains here. Well, tonight we'll be exploring the history of Fort Paull, the paranormal claims attached to it, and some of the experiences reported here over the years. And joining us for this special episode is somebody whose work many of you will already know well, and someone who's obviously been on the podcast before. We are being joined by historian, paranormal researcher and author Mike Covell. Hello, Mike.
Good evening. Mike. How are you okay?
Yeah, we're all right. So, Mike, you've spent years investigating the strange history and folklore of Hull and the surrounding area, and we talked about that extensively in when the last time you joined us. So you've been documenting everything from local hauntings and ghost lore to some of Yorkshire's most enduring supernatural mysteries, and your knowledge of the region's dark history makes you the perfect person to join us when we step inside. You know, it's possibly one of Hull's most talked about paranormal locations. Would you agree with that?
Oh, I would agree. Yeah, it's over the years it's gained quite a lot of traction in the paranormal world. It's been the scene of numerous sightings, numerous experiences, numerous paranormal investigations. There's been TV shows, documentaries, all sorts really. So it's interesting to be here.
Yeah, and we've been here a couple of hours now having a walk around, and it is an incredible sight, isn't it? You know, I mean, we're actually recording from one of the underground tunnels, and we've specifically chosen this one because this one's just got a feel to it, hasn't it? It's got a vibe. So it's going to make for a very, very exciting episode. So
welcome to hell written on the walls.
On the way in,
really
yeah.
Helps with the
yeah. There is a little contrived, but it certainly still doesn't help when you sat here. So we've got equipment set up around the place. We've got a REM pod. We've got the cat balls out. We've got EMF readers. So there's lights everywhere. We've got like the dot projectors. Yeah, we've got all sorts of stuff kicking about. If all of a sudden we hear a very loud beep, that is the REM pod, which means that something is touching it. Now, we've obviously got no way of being able to prove or disprove to you when we're an audio-only podcast that it's not one of us, but, well, what benefit would there be to us doing that?
Might well hear us scream or...
That's it. The podcast episode might end abruptly with us screaming like girls, to be honest.
You've pointed out as well that there's lights everywhere. We should maybe point out that they're not illuminating lights.
No.
We're actually sat in the darkness. The lights are from the laser grid.
Yeah.
And from the various devices that are set up in sort of a perimeter around us, really. We've surrounded ourselves with kit and sat in a very dark corner.
Yeah. We're just huddled into a corner and, we can't really see much. I'm reading my questions for Mike by torchlight.
Thought you had a knock just round the corner.
I thought I had a knock.
Hello? So we've not even finished the introduction.
Oh no, I was going to say we're off to a good start, aren't we? Good Lord. Okay.
And I mean, the area lends itself to that as well. The area that we're sat in would have been a munitions room where they would have uploaded shells to the battery that's above us. But throughout the years, it's been turned into sort of a memorial, a shrine, an exhibition to World War One. So we're basically sat near a medical bay. We've just walked through what are designed to look like World War One trenches. So there's corrugated iron on the walls, there's wood on the floor. So it lends itself really to that kind of spooky atmosphere. It's pitch black.
Yeah.
There's a couple of rooms off from where we are, and then there's a dark tunnel that leads back out to the exit. So when you come in here, you kind of get an eerie feeling. It does feel strange.
Eerie
Yeah,
feeling,
there was definitely a vibe when you came in, and although the others were all eerie in their own way, this one felt different. It really did just feel creepy. What was that?
Another tap. That
there was
like
another tap there.
On the way in as well, we have seen a number of rather unsettling mannequins with severed heads, severed limbs.
Yeah.
It's very strange. It's like a scene from...
Stood lined up in
it's like a scene from Ed Gein or something like that.
Yeah, it is a bit,
strange, so.
There is just mannequins everywhere, which are obviously props, but it certainly doesn't make it feel any more settling. There's got to be something in there for it to be making that sound. I keep hearing like a scratch, or it might be a rat or something, maybe.
Oh, lovely. Nice. Yeah, add to the World War One feeling.
Yeah, absolutely. Just need trench foot next. Anyway, so dim the lights, settle in, and join us as we uncover the history, the hauntings, and what hides in the shadows of Fort Paull from beyond the veil. So, Mike, for those who may not know, what exactly is Fort Paull, and why is it such an important site historically?
So think of Fort Paull as a giant cake with layers and layers and layers of history. So you've got this fantastic Napoleonic site. You've got fortifications that were put here during the English Civil War. You've got later additions that came during the First World War. You've got later additions that came during the Second World War. So you've basically got all these delightful tunnels, corridors, crypts, bunkers, basements, from eras and eras of history. There's stories that Henry VIII came to this site. This story that Charles I fired cannons on this site, and as such, there is a cannonball in the local church in Paul Church, which you can see the tower from Fort Paull itself. So there's just layers and layers of history, and with that, obviously, come a lot of stories of what happened here and the events that transpired here. Of course, we're just across the Humber from Stalinborough, which was a massive site that was used in throughout the periods of World War One and World War Two. Upriver from where we are, you've got Cherry Cobb Sands, you've got Sunk Island. All these places were used as defensive positions right throughout. Where we're sat right now, we're just down the Humber from Hull, which of course was the second most bombed city outside of London. So we're in an area that is surrounded by war, historically speaking, war and tragedy, and lots of deaths. And then the site where we are, Fort Paull, is right on the edge of the Humber. So you only a stone's throw away from where we are is Paul Church, which is full of people that died in the vicinity. But as well as that, there's lots of bodies that they pulled from the Humber that are buried in there. So there's a lot of tragedy in the immediate vicinity of where we are. With that, of course, there's also folklore and legends. There's people come to sites like this and make up stories. So we've got that aspect as well that hopefully we can dig into a little bit of that later on. And maybe we can, factually prove those, or maybe we can debunk them. So there's that type of thing as well. And I think that's what draws people here. I think that's why it's such a popular venue. It is open to the public now. They do paranormal events in here. I believe they've done scare activities. They've had weekends where they've had crystals and all that kind of stuff. They've had all sorts going on. I just did a couple of...
There was a couple of taps.
Yeah.
Is there anybody there? Do you want to do that again?
It's strange that you can hear a pin drop.
Yeah.
It's so silent. There's no... In some of the tunnels we went in, you can hear exterior noises, you can hear voices from the outside of the fort. In here, it's very secluded. So when stuff does happen, you can hear it quite clearly.
Yeah.
There was what appeared to be another thump then.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely
Quite
silent in
loud
here.
on
Yeah.
It's a very strange atmosphere.
There is.
We're all just kind of, and it's a podcast, so it relies on audio, and we're all just kind of sat in the quiet, sort of staring at a wall full of green dots.
These silences, like unless the mics capture something, I'm going to have to remove these silences out. Yeah, so it's going to sound very strange when I'm editing it. Okay, yeah. So with that in mind, then, Mike, how does Fort Paull compare to other historical locations in Hull in terms of atmosphere? Then, because it's obviously got such a layered history with so many, conflicts that it will have seen, which obviously we'll talk about. But with that in mind, then, how does it compare to other historical sites, which are obviously quite rife for paranormal activity?
Well, I'm thinking in terms of size and scope. I think it's a massive site. I mean, I showed you guys around earlier, and you just get a sense of how big the site is. So many of the venues in Hull that have paranormal activity tend to be quite small. They tend not to be really big places. There's a couple that are an exception to the rule. Royal Station Hotel, back in the day when they used to open that up, it was quite an extensive site with a lot of tunnels underground and stuff like that. So that was a nice site. As well as that, Hull New Theatre was another big site that's very, very extensive. They used to do paranormal events in there, and of course you had the underground bits, you had the upper floors, the stuff backstage that you don't normally see. So those sites are really, really interesting. But in terms of the layers of history, this place has just got so many. I mean, when you go to places like Hull New Theatre and Royal Station Hotel, they're Victorian, so you can pretty much trace their history through the archives, whereas this one is a little bit more difficult because we have because it was super secret, because it was a military place, there's lots of gaps in the historical learning. And when you're researching this in the archives, it's a bit of a struggle because you've got to travel all over the place to get the records and things like that. So there's lots of periods where we just don't know what was going on. But then on the opposite side of that, there's periods where we knew the militia were here, we knew people were camping here, we knew the scouts used to come here. All that type of stuff is documented right through the Victorian period. In Hull, you had 6 or 7 newspapers that were publishing pretty much every day. So there was stuff going on all the time that was being recorded and documented on this site. Did you see something off my shoulder?
Some sort of changing light.
The dots pulsed, didn't they?
Yeah.
Yeah, I saw that out of the corner of my eye, and the other two went very quiet.
Yeah,
So,
honestly, those dots just pulsed. They just went boom, as if like they just got brighter in it for a second and then went dark again, like dimmer.
Because I didn't know if it was just my eyes at first.
Yeah, it definitely happened. Good Lord. So the site dates back to as far as Henry VIII. How significant is that in terms of the fort's layered history?
I mean, it's fascinating when you think of who Henry VIII was and what he did in the area. One of the things that he did was he came to Hull and gave us a lot of cash to create the fortifications around the city. That shouldn't have happened.
What the hell?
That shouldn't have. The new batteries, that.
Okay, so
That might have been me dropping that. So just bear that in mind. But yeah, that should not have happened.
So the dots projector has just like died,
Switched itself off. Fear not. Second dot projector.
That's very strange.
So
The noise
is not a visual medium because you'd have seen me jump out my skin.
yeah. Well, you practically sat on my lap.
yeah, well, I think when I dropped the torch down, I think that's what set off the REM pod and the cat box.
Yeah.
So I think we're all right there. But that should not have switched off.
That is very strange. So yeah, if that noise that
Very
you heard,
abrupt, it didn't flicker, did it?
it just completely went off. But yeah, that noise that you heard, that would be the REM pod. So if we hear that go off, otherwise, something's touching that we can't see. Okay, interesting. So yeah, as we were saying about Henry VIII.
Sorry, yeah, we was, weren't we?
Yeah. So we were saying about how we'd given a lot. Maybe we just weren't happy we were talking about him then.
There was just a knock right next to my leg, just then. Jeez. Is that you, Mr. Henry VIII?
Or someone who doesn't like Henry VIII.
So yeah, Henry was involved in the dissolution of the monasteries. He was involved with the fortifications of Hull. He bestowed upon us a beautiful sword that's kept at the Guildhall in Hull. He did quite a lot for the city, but it wasn't all good. Around the surrounding areas, he went to places like Swine, Mewkes and Warne, to all these different abbeys and monasteries and just basically teared them down, stole their gold and silverware and things like that, and he wanted his own religion. So it's a bit of a love-hate relationship with Henry VIII in Hull. He was also heavily involved in the execution of Sir Robert Constable, who was hanged in chains from Beverley Gate. So he was quite a notorious character. But there were stories that he'd come here and started building this fortification. And in fact, there's a tunnel here named the Henry VIII Tunnel, which we walked down earlier on this evening.
What the hell?
So that's the second.
Oh, okay.
What the hell?
So the DOTS projector again has turned off, and this is a different one. It keeps turning on and off.
I'm at a loss.
Oh God!
I'm at a loss. It's switched on. It shouldn't be doing this. It's not Morse code, is it? Do you guys know Morse code or not?
Sadly not.
Yeah.
It shouldn't do this. I'm very, very baffled as to why.
We should be recording some of this, you know. Like.
It's come back on. And actually, wait a minute. Switch my torch on. I don't know if you guys can see this. It's come loose.
Oh.
So the electric port has unscrewed by itself. Wait a minute, let me just turn that one back on. And we'll go back to the other one and see if that's happening there. That one's on. But that one's just come on. And that one's just gone off.
And that one's gone off again.
And back on.
That cat balls. Oh, that might be. Yeah.
I'm really baffled. I've never had this much technology go this crazy in this very short period of time in all the years I've been doing this. But it's fascinating, isn't it? I mean, what's doing it? What's every time we talk about bloody Henry VIII?
Yeah.
Somebody here not a fan of old Henry?
King Henry, if you please.
Well, if they're not a fan, they won't mind me saying old Henry, will they?
No, true.
No, I don't know what's... If it's got a power source, the power source should be on all the time, shouldn't it? And then it'll gradually run out and switch off.
Yeah,
that's switching on and off.
It's not behaving like a battery.
And when it's coming back on, it's coming on very, very bright. And I've used these at multiple locations. Never had an issue with them.
Okay.
I blame the mannequins.
Indeed. Seeing as, you know, potentially they don't like us talking about Henry VIII, we'll move on to what kind of lives would have soldiers have lived, and how harsh would conditions have been here?
It would have been. I mean, there would have been. It would have been quite difficult for them. There would have been drilling, not drilling, but marching up and down. There would have been exercises and stuff like that. They would have had to practice stuff. So there would have been, you know, how to use the machine guns, how to use their, you know, the weaponry that surrounds the fort and stuff like that. There's stories of them staying in tents on the main field upstairs, which is a big open field, through all weathers as well. So it would have been cold, it would have been wet. There's stories of the upper brass on site living in the actual buildings that we've been around this evening, which are a bit more, well, I want to say warmer, but you know, some of them had fatter places. I guess there would have been, but at the moment they're not so much. So there's that. So it would have been quite harsh. Every now and again, the local press would come down and meet them and interview them. And of course, when the media turns up, we know that they would have said things like, "Oh, it's lovely, it's great, you know, we're doing this for king and country or queen and country or whatever." But then when they go, there would have been, you know, quite harsh punishments and stuff like that. We know there was a few incidents where soldiers were punished and stuff like that. There's a bit of a myth locally that it was a prison. It was never a prison. There's stories that soldiers were locked up here and stuff like that. That never happened. There's no historical evidence of that. I think what's given that impression is some of the old buildings have doors which have bars on them, because it's where the munitions would have been kept. So, you know, it's gone off again. Any old person couldn't just walk in, but those bars have obviously given the impression that it was a prison. Yeah. You know, so there's a lot of stories in terms of the paranormal where people have said maybe it was a prisoner or something like that. So there's that, there's I think I'm really distracted by that.
It's hard, isn't it?
Yeah.
It is hard, to be fair,
So-
to record in a place like this when all that's going off, because it's drawing your attention to it, isn't it? I must admit. But yeah, I can totally understand where you're coming from, because even things like this where we're sat in front of what would have been an old exhibition, and things like this give the vibe that it would have been a prison.
Yeah.
Even just these old installations of exhibitions.
Grates and bars on the door.
That's it. It's, doors with padlocks on them and everything else. I can understand why there might have been like some sort of urban legend that's been built around people's, it just felt like a prison, and then how that's moved and everything else like that. So I can understand how that kind of thing would happen, to be fair. So do you think like places with long military histories are more likely to develop paranormal reputations? I mean, I think there is a bit of a thing that places that are formerly military bases, even things like military bunkers, nuclear bunkers, they seem to have these reputations of being haunted. Do you think that is, often the case, and that there's a reason for that?
Yeah, I think if you look at where we are, not far away from where you've got RAF Lisset, you've got RAF Catfoss, you've got RAF Hampton. These are locations that have all reported paranormal activity. But if you think about the daily lifestyle, it would have been a lifestyle of, you get up at a set time, you have your lunch at a set time, you do your drills at a set time. So it would have been routine. So if you think that if you do that every day for years and years and years, it's bound to leave some sort of impression. So in the aftermath, when they get closed down and abandoned, people are going to maybe see that impression carrying on. And we do get, from RAF Lisset, that people said they had aeroplanes taking off and engines, and RAF Carnaby, people have had aeroplanes coming in, they've seen an airman walking up and down. RAF Catfoss, people have had aeroplanes and engines and whatnot. So there is sort of quite a lot of cases in our area. There's many more that, there's Elvington and many more other airfields that have experienced that kind of activity. So it does lend itself, the military aspect and the paranormal aspect. Is it that they're just going through their daily drills, and what people are seeing is them continuing
like an echo of it?
Yeah, like a replay.
Yeah,
Yeah, like you said, the repetitive lifestyle that they would have lived would lend itself to that, wouldn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, definitely. I mean, because that's what we've said before about like hauntings, that like not necessarily every place has to have like a history of a death being in there or whatever, but usually, it's a case of it's a build-up of negative energies and things like that. So I suppose when you think of people going through very rigorous drills constantly, that would have been quite soul-destroying for a lot of people. It would have been difficult circumstances to constantly be in, day out. It does make you think about like the negative energy that would have built under those kind of circumstances. I mean, I suppose recently, or over time, Fort Paull's become known as a bit of a paranormal hotspot, potentially because of these things. But when did those reports really begin to emerge?
Well, actually, one of the earliest ghost stories from Paull itself was in the early 1900s. The roads that we drove up to get to Fort Paull, people claim to have seen a spirit dressed head to toe in white, almost wearing a white robe. And in fact, the Hull Times, which was a local newspaper, published it was a sketch, and it showed this spirit dressed in a white robe, but it did just look like a man dressed in a white bedsheet.
Yeah.
So there was that story. That was quite an early story from Paull. Just down the road from where we are is Paull Home Tower. They've reported paranormal activity there. That was another defensive lookout. There's been quite a few ghost stories in the surrounding area, but Fort Paull as a paranormal hotspot, the stories really started in sort of the 1980s. People were coming here to visit it when it was sort of abandoned. For many years it was turned into a paintball location. People was reporting stuff then. Early 2000 it gets turned into a museum. People start reporting it more and more because more and more people are coming in. And then in recent years, you had Most Haunted come down there, filmed it was a two-parter actually. It was a very long investigation. And then they've had numerous events here as well, and other groups have come, and it's just really taken off from there. A lot of the things that have happened is people have created sort of this mythos, this kind of legendary, sort of a parallel narrative of history for the site, which in turn has spawned its own ghost stories and its own legends and stuff like that.
Yeah. Well, actually, I mean, it's a good place you've left that there, because then, therefore, what are the most commonly reported experiences people do have at the fort?
So throughout the years, people have experienced stuff in the tunnels that we're in. There's been experiences in here, in Henry VIII's tunnel, all sorts, from knocks and taps to stones getting thrown and things like that. Paranormal groups have come in and placed equipment out, and they've found equipment's been moved, relocated, lost. On several occasions, people have seen a soldier marching up and down on an embankment just at the end. There's been a number of military personnel seen around the site, usually on the upper flanks of the where the gun batteries are and stuff like that. And they've approached them, and of course they've disappeared. But probably the most infamous of stories comes from the story of Rabbit Nanny. She's quite an infamous ghost at Fort Paull. And I really want to get into that one, because I think it's important we cover her story.
Go for it.
So the story goes that Rabbit Nanny was a lady that lived and died at Fort Paull. And according to this story, her ghost actually haunts the property. People have been telling this story for quite some time. One of the sort of, imagine a branch, if you will. You've got the main narrative of Rabbit Nanny, but then people say she lived here. Then it branches off and they say she died here. Then it branches off and they say she was murdered here. So of course, who was she? Who was the real woman behind the story? So I went to the archives to research this lady, and she was called Mary Jenkinson. She lived in Hull. She sold rabbits, and for £10, which back then in the Victorian period when she died, in sort of the 1840s, I think it was, 1830s, she left the body to science, to medical science. And she basically said to a local doctor, "I'll give you my body when I die for a tenner."
That's crazy. Yeah, it's so weird.
So basically she died, and her body passed on to a guy called Dr. William Banks Hay. And William Banks Hay lived in Hull. He was a medico, he was a surgeon and all this type of things. And he basically stripped her skin and studied her bones and kept her bones in his office for many, many years. And then he died, and there's stories of it being passed on to a guy called Mr. Battersby. And Mr. Battersby, he was the second owner, and he basically saw an advertisement for a body and bought it. And Mr. Battersby lived locally in Paull, and he set up a museum of antiquities in Paull. And he basically bought wrecked ships, brought them to Paull, had them all berthed up. He would go around collecting curios and other bits and bobs. And according to one report that was published in the Hull Times, it said that when you walked into his sort of warehouse, there were just piles of bones as far as the eye could see, all manner of curiosities and curios and stuff. And he purchased their body and had it on display. And then he died. And when he died, there was a big auction to sell all this stuff on. And it was reported that the military personnel from this site purchased her bones to bring here to use in practical jokes. They would put them in rooms and stuff, and to scare their officers. So she basically remained here. So she didn't live here. She never died here. She wasn't murdered here. She was just put on display here for many, many years. And earlier on we went to visit the site where her body was, and I showed. I mean, it's a podcast so you can't see, but for the benefit of the viewers, I'm showing you a picture of her body, and it's basically the upper torso, and you can see the rib cage and things like that. And it's really fabulous because Mrs. Jenkinson was a real human being, a real person. Does she haunt the fort? I couldn't tell you. It would be nice to think she's still knocking about here, but she's got this fake sort of history, and we do that a lot in Hull. We do it at lots of venues where, especially where there's bones and skulls and stuff on display, we make up history. Over the years, people just regurgitate the story and never bother to go into the archives and research these stories. So they just get accepted. So when you go to these places, they'll say, "Oh well, yeah, it's haunted by that skeleton in the corner." And they lived and died here and this type of thing. And it's not necessarily true. But what people forget is that we're ultimately dealing with real people. These are real humans that have lived their life, and the people on this fort would have possibly given their lives defending this country, if not the city and surrounding area. So we owe them that manner of respect, really. So when we come to places like this, I'm always respectful of these individuals and the work that they played in defending the city and East Yorkshire, really.
Yeah, I think that's right. I mean, we touched on this anyway when we last had you on the show, didn't we, Mike? Where we was talking about like how you've gone through history to get to the bottom of many of these urban legends, myths, or whatever that have been built within the city, and just how that sort of happens everywhere in the world. And it's just a shame that people, like you just said there, don't bother to really fact check, because can you imagine if like there was a story told about you long after you go, Lee, and
I'm sure there will be.
Oh well, I'm sure there will, but see if they turn around and they went, oh yeah, well, Lee, a man called Lee Wise lived here, and then that goes from being, yeah, well, he lived here. Oh, well, he committed suicide here.
Yeah, exactly.
And then not only did he commit suicide here, he killed 3 kids here as well.
I think it's because people enjoy such stories that they get. Human beings have told stories since time began, really. And I think people enjoy them and want them to be real. And we discussed this before, Mike, that, even as far as...
I hope that's a real plane and not a phantom plane. We were just talking about phantom planes taking off from nearby. I hope that's a real one.
But it's not a Messerschmitt. I think, even sometimes when you've debunked things, it's got to the level of you having death threats. Yes. But I found it really odd because I understand enjoying the stories, and I enjoy them, and there's been various stories I've thought to be true that have been kind of urban legends. I've been disappointed when I found out that they're not real. But there's so many real, historically backed, interesting stories. I don't understand the level at which people go to insist that these things are true, when you can debunk a lot of things with history. You can't debunk somebody who just says they've seen a ghost, but if they then start coming up with a story and a narrative of the background, you can back that up with history or debunk it with history.
Well, but we only spoke about this earlier when we've been walking around, haven't we? It's just like, why? You're only fooling yourself, aren't you?
Yeah.
You said that classic thing of like what teachers used to say, but it's like, oh, you're only cheating yourself, and it's like the same thing.
I mean, they never said it to me often. I didn't cheat a lot.
well, I mean, you're going to say that on the podcast, aren't you? But yeah, but it's we want to prove or at least experience something that we can't explain. But we want it to be real, don't we?
Yeah.
Why would you cheat yourself out of something completely fictional?
Make something up easily.
Yeah. But then you're only fooling yourself, aren't you? You say, oh yeah, well I got punched in the face by a ghost. Yeah, but did you? You would know you were lying, but what's the benefit in lying?
Exactly.
I never understand that. And then creating this narrative around, the Rabbit Nanny, was it?
Yeah, Rabbit Nanny.
It's like, well, again, like just creating this boogeyman figure.
But the actual story that Mike's just told us is pretty interesting.
Still interesting, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's a good story.
Yeah.
I like it. So
like Mike
don't
said,
need all of this.
No, well, like Mike said, could still haunt the place, but why put all the other bells and whistles on it?
Yeah.
What, just to make it more fantastic?
The issue of, are you going to put the man hours in and going to go research that?
Yeah.
Or are you just going to make a story up?
Yeah.
So, and that's what I found. I found a lot of, especially in paranormal groups, they just make the story up. They don't go with the history side. They don't go to the archives. Very rarely see paranormal investigators in the history centre or anything like that. Very, very rarely. they'll just come and regurgitate what they've seen online, and obviously all it takes is, like we were discussing earlier on, all it takes is for one bad apple to make up a claim.
Yeah.
You know, I've seen a nun, and then that becomes accepted fact. Then you know.
Yeah, exactly. In terms of other reports here, then outside of that, we've got reports of shadow figures and voices, amongst various other things. Have you got any documented reports of those sorts of things?
Yeah, well, I mean, over the years, as well as conducting my own investigations here and joining other investigations here, I've worked with people that have visited here and carried out their own investigations. So we often share stories and things like that. And one of the useful things about that is, obviously, if I've experienced something in a particular area and they come independently and say, well, I experienced something in that area, that for me is always interesting. So for example, the Henry VIII tunnel, I've spoken to about 20 independent witnesses that have had experiences down there, from, you know, feeling a cold draft going past them, feeling uneasy, feeling nauseous, feeling lightheaded, all the way down to seeing shadow figures moving on the upper floor, because it's like a 2-level, you know, we explored it area. It's like a 2-level room.
Yeah.
When you're standing on the ground floor, people have seen sort of legs moving around the upper floor. When they've gone up to the upper floor, they've seen people moving around on the ground floor. And then on the actual tunnel itself, people have seen shadow figures, and equipment's gone crazy down there and stuff like that. So when things like that happen, and you speak to multiple witnesses and they've all experienced the same thing in the same area, that for me is quite compelling. So throughout the years, I've had the first section of the fort that we visited was an underground section where there was a person that was hanged, sort of a mannequin, you know, on the corner, and it was there. It was where the bones of Rabbit Nanny was kept. So people have experienced stuff down there. I've had grown-ups actually say to me, can you take me outside because I feel unwell, I don't like it down here.
Wow.
So I've had to take them outside. So that's that particular area. Where we are right now, I've had stones thrown and things like that. Multiple people have witnessed that. Almost like someone doesn't want you down here. And to be honest, we've had a few bits and bobs here while we've been just been sat, so that's quite compelling.
Yeah. Fucking hell! And then the dots just come straight back on and gone off again.
So getting shivers down the spine.
Yeah, my shiver that.
Yeah, my hair's stood on end then.
So it's quite compelling when multiple witnesses all experience the same thing in the same area independently of each other. So I found that quite fascinating. I do like to get them stories. The train carriage is another one. Some of the funniest moments, but I mean also the scariest moments, have took place on that beautiful train carriage. It dates back from the Cold War period. It's from Germany. There's loads of urban legends. One is that Elvis Presley might have been on it.
Only might.
Yeah. So,
we can't even extend to he was on it and make up that lie. We can only lie about him maybe being on it.
So use that if you. Elvis Presley might have been down here.
Yeah. Well, it's great for tourism, but yeah.
Yeah.
So there was a wonderful. Many years ago, I was with a guy called Gary. We were stood with an SLS camera, shining it down the train carriage in the middle of the night, pitch black, and a figure appeared on the SLS camera. And there's stories that the train is haunted by a lady. People have seen this lady moving around on the train. They've smelt perfumes and things like that. They've felt her walk past. So I said to Gary, ask it to do something, because at the moment it's just a stick figure that's just sort of stood there. And he said, can you put your hand in the air? And it put its hand in the air. So he said, put your other hand up. So it put its other hand up. Move your feet. And you could see it moving its legs. And then he said, walk towards me. And with that, I mean, Gary's got like the deepest voice in a man that I've ever heard. His voice sounds like Covell. I just heard him shout, no. And he walked backwards because the figure was walking towards him.
Yeah.
And he left that train carriage and refused to go back. So that was quite compelling. But earlier on, while we were setting up, I went in there by myself, had a quick look around by myself. It does feel eerie in there. But, I mean, the sun was setting earlier. It was beautiful. The train carriage was nice and warm. I spent nights in there where there's frost on the floor and the windows are frosted over and it's so cold. So it's nice to be in there during the one, but there is an eerie feeling in that train carriage. But people go in there they'll sit in there and have the picnics and stuff like that. It's a great little venue to go and sit. And really, really popular. And, you know, and I think they featured it on the Most Haunted episode when they came. I know a lot of paranormal events will do, seances and investigations and vigils and the like in there. So it is a popular attraction, is that one. Whether or not there's any dark history with it, can't find out because it is just a random train carriage.
But it's interesting though, because when there's places that are creepy, tunnels are creepy anyway.
Yeah.
So when there's quite an abundance of tunnels and things at this site, it's funny that there's a bit of activity, and things like Most Haunted have focused a bit on the train, because you wouldn't normally think it's particularly threatening, like you said, Mike.
Well, it's
quite a beautiful.
It's open. You can
carriage.
see outside. It's I mean, on the night it's dark, but during the day it's well illuminated. And it's not a scary, threatening place, but it does have an atmosphere, when you're walking around in there. And I went in earlier on, I went in with my sleeves rolled up, I had my arms out, and I felt something brush against my hand. And I was uncertain whether it was a cobweb, a spider's web, or, maybe an insect. We're sort of Maytime, it's been a beautiful, hot, sunny day, so there's quite a lot of midges and whatnot outside. But at the same time, it did feel a bit weird. It did feel a bit strange in there.
Yeah, 100%. So, disembodied voices seems to be a recurring theme. Has there ever been any sort of EVP evidence captured over the years?
Yeah, I worked with another guy called Gary. Everyone's in the paranormal seems to be called Gary. And he was an EVP specialist, and he would come with a number of different recording devices. And he had a system where he could have an hearing aid in and hear live as stuff was recorded. And he would say, I've just got a voice, or I've just got a sentence. And he would play them back, and you would hear intelligent responses in response to questions. So you would see, did you work here? And you'd hear a voice go, yes. Really clear. And he got quite a lot of stuff. There was another instance where, not so much disembodied voice, but a feeling, and audible noise as well. The old hospital, which is at the other side of the site from where we're sat right now, I was filming in there with a girl called Joanne, and when you go down, it's sort of a small anteroom with two big rooms off, and she was in the far room, and I was in the opposite end, and I felt something slap my ass, and I spun around and said, what the hell, and she was about 20 foot away with the camera, and she said I was nowhere near you, and I was like, come on, stop, and she was like, no, seriously, I was nowhere near you. So she said, let's go look at the footage, and we was looking at the footage, and you can actually physically, you can hear the sound of the slap, and you can see me spin round and react to it, and I'm quite a distance away from her. We're nowhere near each other, but there was stories from that. People were saying, there was an army surgeon who was used to do a lot of work in there, and apparently he was interested in young men. So there is that. Did I have an amorous encounter with an army surgeon that likes young men?
Nice.
Some none. But yeah, it was a weird experience because we was able to go back over that footage, and you can hear as something's in my ass. That was creepy. Because up until that point, I'd never been touched by anything paranormal. So for that to happen was a real. I remember coming upstairs and going to we had like a little canteen set up, and I remember just sitting down with a cup of tea and just thinking, what the hell?
Yeah.
Like that. I always believed that they were there, but not necessarily interact. So, but for that to physically interact with my body, that was a bit of an eye opener.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's it. We've spoke about this before on an episode of the podcast. We've covered it where I had my coat pulled, and I can't 100% say. Same with you, where you spun round and you was like, "Was that you?" I can't 100% say that my experience wasn't someone pulling on my coat, but to have had that happen to me was a strange feeling. Strange feeling. You hearing something?
No, I'm just fixated on the lights while they keep turning her off.
It is weird, isn't
very
it?
unusual.
I think it's really strange that it came on when we said about
made reference to it.
Yeah, and then it came on. Very strange.
I mean, I don't know about you guys, but I do feel weird down here.
I do.
I do feel
very much so.
very strange.
Yeah. And we're getting to wonder whether we not think it was a good idea to record down here, to be fair. Just because of how distracting it is, but it is weird. So we're obviously sat in the tunnels, and we've sort of made reference to them a couple of times throughout this episode, but the tunnels do seem to be a focal point of for activity. Is there a reason certain areas do become active, do you think?
I just think it's cold, dark and scary, It's I'd love to be able to come up with an explanation, but it's like a maze, it's like a warren, and I think that plays tricks with your mind.
Yeah.
I think the surroundings as well, it's designed to look like a trench. I think that's playing heavily on us. The fact that it's really, really historical and we are underground, I think that's playing an element as well.
Yeah.
And the fact that we're hearing these weird knocks and taps and lights are turning on and off by themselves is all adding to that.
Feeds into it, doesn't it?
Yeah, so I think when people come down here, they are, when you walk in, we've been outside, it's been quite a pleasant day, about 20 odd degrees, quite warm, sun's setting, it's beautiful. When we've come in here, the atmosphere changes. It gets really cold.
Yes, it is freezing.
You can see the breath, know, as you breathe out. So there is that weird atmosphere. And I'm not saying that's paranormal, but it all lends to, all those different layers of what we're encountering at the moment all lend to sort of a weird experience.
Well, I think it's a genuinely a good point, really, because I was going to ask you whether you feel that Fort Paull is genuinely haunted, or is it a product of its history and its reputation? Because also we've spoke about it a number of times on the podcast, but also we have an episode dedicated to it about liminal spaces. Do you think it often sort of falls into that category of as well, where as a liminal space, it's our minds playing tricks on us, just as we've just said there?
Yeah, well, I think it's 50-50. We've seen stuff tonight that we can't explain. We've encountered stuff we can't explain. But at the same time, we've come here knowing it's an haunted location. So there's that as well. I think people come to these places to experience something. I think in the days when it was a museum, not so much. I think people came because it was a museum.
Yeah.
And they were experiencing stuff. So that's interesting. At the same time, you get people come to events that don't experience anything.
Yeah.
Or they might be with a group that have experienced something, but in their opinion, that might be something quite natural. We are surrounded by metal and timber that could be settling after a warm day.
Yeah.
So there's always that aspect, but at the same time, I can't explain the bloody lights. That's baffled me.
Well, yeah, exactly. Because there's been a couple of taps here, but there is moisture on these beams directly above us. But that's been caused by the condensation because it's been such a warm day and it's cold in here.
We can tell when it's water droplets.
Yes, but then some of the other things we've heard, we're not sure. But then the lights going off, that is completely bizarre.
On two different.
Yeah, on two different devices.
Yeah,
exactly.
Then again, they've never had an issue. There are fresh batteries in today. This morning I went around all my equipment putting fresh batteries in everything to make sure that it was all charged up ready for this evening. So that's weird.
And it's not normal, like low battery behaviour. It didn't flicker a bit, then it went off, and then that's it.
Previously I've done investigations where I switched just one of them on and left it on for maybe 4 or 5 hours, and it's not had an issue. We were down here 5-10 minutes, it switched off.
That's it.
And then the fact that it kept coming on and off, and it was every time we seemed to mention Henry VIII or something to do with that period in history.
And then on that weird early, when they'd been off for ages, we'd just given up on them, and then we just said something and then flickered back on.
We mentioned we'd had a bit of activity.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, that was it, yeah. And then they flickered on, and then they've gone back off again. And I think that's it, isn't it? It's really strange that, like, I think you're right, it is a bit of a 50-50 thing, isn't it? I think we're always going to struggle to know whether or not it's our minds playing tricks on us. But then when you get potentially what could be classed as evidence there with equipment, although we might not be able to say whether or not that's faulty equipment, but when you've got two doing the exact same thing, that is exceptionally strange. But yeah, it's very, 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 very odd.
I'm just testing what was sat on. Is this wood?
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
I'm just trying to rule out as much as I can.
I know, this is the right thing.
Skeptical side of me.
It's the right thing to do, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, that'll be me. Sorry.
So, the skeptical side of me is looking for explanations as to why this is happening, but at the same time, the believer in me is like jumping up and down like a little boy, like yes.
Yeah.
This is a story I'm going to tell the kids in the morning. I'm not going to. But yeah, and it's. I mean, the other thing for me that was quite compelling as well is that we'd been in previously 6 or 7 tunnels before we came to this one. And the minute we walked through that door, all 3 of us sort of looked at each other and were like, this
there's
feels
something
weird.
different
Definitely
in here.
something different.
Something different about this one, 100%. And we hadn't even been down this bit, it was just the minute we walked through the door, wasn't it?
Just the front
so
entrance.
we was literally in the entrance, and I was like, there's something different about this one. There's a vibe in here. and there 100% is. 100% is. So with that in mind, then, where we're sorting, like we're saying we're 50-50, but based off the reports, the documented cases, your own experiences, do you lean more toward psychological explanation or something genuinely paranormal at Fort Paull?
I think there's something genuine, definitely. I mean, I've experienced too much to kind of... I mean, and even just sat with you guys, I can definitely say there's something weird going on. I don't know what it is, but there's something weird going on.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the amount of times I've been over the years, and I've been coming here since I was a kid, it's never let me down. It's never disappointed. There's always been an evening where something has happened. And usually it'll be, I'll get a group of people come up to me and say, oh, well, we saw something, we've experienced something. And I found that really compelling, because these are usually in places that I've been previously and felt it and seen it and experienced it, but I've been either alone or with a small group. And, you know, when there's a few of you kind of debate it and you rationalise it, and, you know, so when other people come and experience it, that's fascinating.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, because it kind of corroborates
definitely.
something you've experienced.
I do believe the place is haunted. I do believe there's a something here. I'm not sure what it is. I'd like to think it's maybe the old soldiers are come back to the place they loved and carry on doing the work they loved and stuff like that. I've never ever thought that it was anything dark or anything like that. It never feels that way. It feels more playful than anything else.
Would you say it's almost like the grounds are kind of like holding on to its past, do you think?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, if you think of all the activity that's gone on in these, I'd like to say Fort Wall, but Fort Paull is not a four-wall building. It's a weird shape. But if you think of all the activity that's gone on inside the walls of this fort, generations and generations of people that have lived and worked and you know, carried out their duties on this site, that's a lot of people.
Yeah.
And then if you think like you know, if the stonework and stuff holds on to those memories and keeps replaying them, potentially you've got 300 or 400 years of history replaying. Yeah. So there's bound to be people seeing stuff and experiencing stuff over the years.
And the people, I suppose, would have had quite a passion for it, because they were protecting the country, the city,
the families,
the
you know,
loved
they'd be
and the
looking
families.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's also going to explain why so many people have all independently reported very similar activity, isn't it? You know, because if that is the theory, that they are, you know, that it is just like this ongoing like echo type thing, then people are going to sort of like say that they've seen the same thing or whatever. You know, it's I think that's probably a very good reason for that. So if you could give any advice to anyone who was going to come here to investigate, where would you start?
Wow. Come with people that you trust. That's a big one. On paranormal investigations, I've seen people throwing bits of metal, nails, wax and stuff like that. Do a bit of research before you come. Bring some decent snacks, because it's not as glamorous as what people make out. Wrap up warm, because we've been upstairs in t-shirts, and then we've come down here and it's freezing.
I am freezing down here.
Yeah, it's so cold. So layer up. And just enjoy yourself, you know, just come with an open mind. A lot of people come to places scared, but just come with an open mind and see what you encounter and enjoy yourself.
And what areas of the fort would you sort of prioritise for a paranormal investigation?
Well, the first location that we went to, which is, at the moment, it's closed off to the public, but we were given exclusive access tonight. That was a site where, over the years, a lot of things have been encountered down there and experienced. And that's in one of the underground sections where Rabbit Nanny's bones used to be. It's where there's a mannequin that's hanging.
I did find it eerie down there.
Yeah, there was a vibe down there.
Yeah, it's creepy.
I don't know if it's because it's quite narrow and it's kind of windy.
Yeah, it's very windy. It's like a maze down there. It's almost set out like a funhouse, like a haunted paranormal funhouse.
Like a ghost house. Yeah.
So that one, this place where we're sat right now with the old World War I trenching, I think this is quite an interesting area. And Henry VIII's tunnel, purely because that straight and narrow tunnel, when you get to the other end, looking back, it just plays tricks on you, man. I remember one night I'd gone down there and took a picture, and it looked like a figure. And when I zoomed in, it looked like something off Minecraft. It looked like and I thought, I can't just leave it at that. And I remember going back on my own, walking down, and it was basically the light shining down had created this effect of an outline of a figure. And when I got there, I realised it was just because there was furniture in the way and stuff like that. And I kind of debunked it on my own.
Yeah.
But if I'd have put that online and said, look, this is
Yeah.
people would have believed that. But I think those areas are probably the most.
Yeah. Well, I think we've said before, I mean, tunnels and underground tunnels are inherently creepy anyway, aren't they? But then I think when you've got the kind of history that this place has, then that's only going to make for a very, productive investigation, I think, What kind of evidence would you consider to be compelling if someone captured it here? Is there something? I suppose any paranormal activity would be compelling in itself, but in terms of relevance to the location, what would you consider to be compelling evidence?
It would be amazing if your listeners could come with their own laser grids, set them up down here, and see what happens.
Can you imagine that? If it started turning them on and off.
See what their experiences had. That would be definitely an interesting experiment.
Yeah,
if your listeners could come and try that down here.
Yeah.
But yeah, I often find the most compelling evidence is when people have experienced the same stuff that I have independently of me on other occasions.
Yeah.
Whether it be experiences down in these tunnels or sightings on the ground level, stuff going on in the train. When people come and report stuff to me in places where I've felt the same, that to me blows me away. But then, I mean, it's awkward. It's hard to say, like, if someone comes and sees soldiers, because we're on a military site, so that could be just their man playing tricks on them. But when you've been in a certain area and you've felt a certain way or you've seen something, if someone independently comes forward and said, this is what I felt, and it matches up, I found that really compelling.
Yeah, exactly.
Like when we walked in and we all felt the same way.
Yeah,
I found that quite interesting because we'd all said it independently of each other, but at the same time it was like...
Yeah, it was almost at the same point as well.
Well, that's it. We all just stopped, didn't we? It was not one of us just went, oh, I feel a bit weird in here. Oh, yeah, me too. We all just sort of just stopped, didn't we? And was like, ooh.
How are you guys feeling right now?
I'm a little on edge, to be fair.
Exactly the same. Exactly the same.
I'm a little on edge. I don't like the fact that I'm sat in front of this.
I keep feeling like the end.
Yeah.
I'm quite happily swap places.
Yeah, but I don't like the fact that I feel like something's behind there.
There is the mannequins.
Shut up. But yeah,
I actually feel nauseous right now.
Really?
At this moment in time, I feel sick.
Wow.
I feel very on edge. Definitely.
Am I on edge?
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah, I certainly don't feel like we're alone. Which is that classic.
There's a great quote from Rambo where he says, "Neither one of us wants to be here, but this is who we are. It's what we do." And he's right. This is what we do.
That's right.
It's true. That is very true. Yeah,
it's cold.
Yeah,
it's not very nice at all. But here we are, sat in the darkness, doing what we do.
Rambos are the paranormal.
Yeah. Rambos are the paranormal. Well, we want that proof, don't we? And this is what we've got to do. So in terms of, like, just sort of carrying on that investigation route, if someone was to spend the night alone inside Fort Paull,
not this.
What would you expect them to experience?
Oh, it depends where. I mean, if they come around these areas, it wouldn't be very pleasant. But if they stayed upstairs in a tent, it's lovely.
Yeah.
You've got earlier on we were outdoors and you were doing the interviews and we'd gone out to the field. There was all manner of beautiful birds flying around. Yeah. There was swallows and swifts, and and it was gorgeous.
Well, even when we just had a quick walk around, just all the wildlife and everything.
Yeah.
It's beautiful, isn't it?
I mean, those flowers up there are like the biggest dandelions and things like that.
Daisies, that's
like the wild kingdom.
Mutant daisies for sure. I took pictures of them because I'm going to show them to Charlotte. She'll be like, "Oh, we're going to pick those."
It's a pretty place, isn't it? When you're not in these tunnels.
Yeah. When you're actually out in it, and
I think as well, what'll be weird by the time we do get out, I reckon it'll be pretty dark.
Oh, it's going to be dark now. Yeah, 100%. So what do you think continues to draw people and paranormal investigators to investigate a place like this?
I think the history plays a big part. It's got so many layers of history. I think its reputation in the field as well. I know when you talk to people about Fort Paull and stuff like that, it's got kind of a legendary status behind it.
Yeah.
And I just think the venue is just gorgeous. The guys that run it, really nice guys. You know, they've done a lot of work here. They've basically, this is a passion for them. They've took this on as a passion project.
Yeah.
And they do it because they love doing it. And I think that draws people. There's so many amazing events going on. I mean, on the way in, there was the big posters with all the events that are coming up, which is great for the site. Hopefully get more people through the doors and stuff and get them exploring and hopefully on a knock-on effect is they'll experience stuff as well.
Yeah.
But I just think it's a really lovely site. It was closed for quite a long time and people were really sad that it closed, and so when it was reopened there was quite a lot of interest in it and people were quite happy.
Yeah.
And I know locally a lot of people came here when they were kids, so the fact that we've got it back is really good for people that remember it as children and now want to bring their kids and their grandkids and so on. Yeah. So it's hopefully a generational thing.
Well, I think what I really like about Nick and other Nick as well, you know, who have taken this on, and they're not using it as we've said about places like potentially De Grey Street and things like that. They haven't taken it on to make it a paranormal money spinner. They've taken it on to restore the history of the place, and it's almost like the paranormal thing is just something that's come with it.
Yeah,
it was just like
and
an
they
extra.
Don't mind you doing.
That's it, and they know that there is some, you know, by their own admission, they've said that they've experienced things and they're not sure about, and they can't explain. But that isn't the primary. That's not their bread and butter of this place. It's just one of those things that comes part and parcel of it. And I really like that. You know, you can tell that they're not just desperate to get paranormal investigators through the door. It's just not a priority for them. They just want to restore and, you know, keep this incredible site going. And I think that's amazing. Yeah. You know. So I guess finally we'll just sort of wrap up then with saying.
Get the hell out of here.
Yeah. Well, what would you say is probably the most sort of profound experience you've had in here in the times that you've you've done your investigations here? You've experienced a few different things similarly as you've come, but what would you say is probably the one which has been the biggest event for you, but the one that stayed with you the most as well?
Definitely being slapped on the arse in the dark by a homosexual ghost.
Nice.
It's one of them that you can, you know, tell at parties and stuff. It's
yeah.
It was just after I'd experienced that. I remember just sitting there for ages with a cup of tea, just thinking, what the hell, what had just happened to me? I can't explain it. The fact that it was on camera and we caught this audio of it as well. Just freaky.
Yes.
Absolutely freaky.
Yeah.
And then after that, I remember I went to somewhere else and got scratched. I remember going to, when I was doing stuff at Aniston's, I got pushed. So after that, it started to happen a lot more. But that was like the first one. That was the real one that really opened my eyes.
Wow. Yeah. Creepy
Anyone else feel it's just got colder?
Yes, I am definitely. Absolutely.
I know, but I just felt a significant drop in the temperature.
I agree.
I've got that temperature probe somewhere. You remember the one that I had and it wouldn't turn off?
Oh yeah.
It's in one of my pockets. So I've got like 12.8 degrees at the moment. Gosh.
It feels lower than that though.
That's significantly hot.
It does. I mean, it was cold, but I did genuinely just feel a dip then.
Yeah, I agree.
So yeah, very, very, very odd. So we're just sat watching a temperature
temperature gauge, just seeing how cold it is in here.
Just dropping in temperature.
So, Mike, have you ever? We was talking on the way here about like how you've finally started getting some of your books republished again, and they're starting to sort of like make their way back out there, and people can start picking these up both digitally and physically, can't they? Have you ever done a book covering Fort Paull?
Yes, Haunted East Yorkshire, which came out many, many years ago, was available on Amazon. Fort Paull and Fort Paull played a big part in that book because it talks about East Yorkshire and all the different ghost stories and stuff like that. It was a big book. It was like 500 pages. I remember a friend of mine bought it and he said it's one of the biggest, heaviest ghost books he's ever read. He was really blown away by it.
Nice.
There's a new volume, a completely new edition actually. I took it off the market during lockdown, went away, found loads of new case studies, loads of new locations, and with each case study in each location there's loads of history. And when I finished writing it was over 1,000 pages. So it's increased dramatically, and that's going to be hopefully published later this year in 3 volumes.
Amazing.
And Fort Paull will be in there along with the story of Rabbit Nanny and the history of Beata and things like that.
Great stuff. Okay, well, people can look out for that then. And where is the best place to go and pick up your books once they start doing the rounds?
So initially they'll be on Lulu, which is an international online book selling page. But the idea is that we're going to get them pushed into shops and things like that. The deal that I've done is that they will be available on both digital and paperback format. You'll be able to get them offline at various retail sites, but hopefully we'll be in shops as well.
Amazing.
I mean, it'd be great to have them stocked here. A couple of the war ones would be
definitely
this area.
You should speak to them. I'm sure they'll sort that out for you. I guess also will people be able to keep an eye out for announcements on that sort of thing on your social media?
So if you go to the Amazing Old Tours Facebook page, book releases, lectures and tours will be put on there, and it gets updated almost daily.
Amazing. And you're fairly active on X or Twitter, as it was?
Yeah, Twitter at Mike Covell. I post a lot of my history stuff on there, a lot of my tours stuff, and just random pictures of history. I've got a big thing at the minute about dogs, not canines.
It's just like, okay.
Yeah, there's a thing that people do when they build buildings, and they put these big discs on the buildings to stop them falling down, and they're called dogs. And I was writing a book about a building that fell down in Hull in the 1860s, and the entire community was wiped out. All because this guy didn't put dogs on his building. What? So I've been travelling around Hull taking pictures, and the other day I went to Heading and noticed they've got some. And then I had a meeting in Withensea recently, and on the way to Withensea and back on the bus, I noticed all these different dogs, and I just thought, do you know what, I could write a book about dogs. But then I thought I could have a calendar about dogs, and I could maybe call it A Dog a Day. And just have people looking at these beautiful metal discs from Victoria.
Are they quite ornate then?
Some of them are, yeah. There's some beautiful ones. I've got thousands of pictures. I'll show you.
Oh, amazing!
Yeah,
amazing.
So my social media is pretty much full of pictures of dogs at the moment.
Brilliant. All right. Okay. Well, I love the fact that you can turn anything into a book, Mike.
Yeah.
There's no stopping you, is there? No. Fantastic. Okay, and you have another book coming out soon, which we're hoping to get you back on to talk about, because it's something that it's actually quite apt, since the fact that we're sat in a fucking underground tunnel. But your new book is about underground tunnels, is it not?
Yeah. So Underground Hull was a project that I started working on many years ago. Obviously, working in the paranormal, you get invited to a lot of locations that have tunnels. So it made sense to document them and photograph them and draw maps of what they look like. And I realised that not a lot of people get access to these, so I was in quite a privileged position, and I thought it'd make a really good book. So there's places in there like Royal Station Hotel, the whole railway station, places like let me think, Dram Shop, which has got a really big underground area, Guildhall, which has got there's old police cells and stuff down there. Just all these different venues, really. And with each case study, there's photos, there's maps, and there's like case histories as well. And I mean, obviously, a lot of my paranormal activity. That's the reason why I've been called in. But some are fantastic. I remember going to one. A lady had contacted me, and she said, "I'm having some weird stuff going on. Can you come and have a look?" And when I got there, she had a hatch, and she said, "I've never been down in this hatch." So I went in the hatch, and it went sort of underground and disappeared for miles and miles, and there was big arches down there and all sorts.
Oh, wow.
So,
wow.
Yeah, really fascinating.
Yeah. Well, we'll certainly look forward to looking into that, because we're fascinated by like underground tunnels and just like how creepy they are anyway. So definitely looking forward to reading that, and we'll get you back on the podcast hopefully, and you can tell us some creepy stories from those. We'd love to hear those. That'd be great. And I guess from us in the meantime, we've just set up a Patreon, guys. So if you'd like to, guys and girls and whatever else, if you would like to support the podcast, we're trying to get out to do more on-site locations and recordings, and we have some pretty big things coming up there and in the pipeline. And if you'd like to join us and help us out on Patreon and be a Patreon member, go check it out. And some of the benefits of being a Patreon member are on our Patreon page, which can be found on our Facebook, to get a link directly through there, amongst like Instagram, etc. So yeah, we're really trying to get onto some more locations for you, and your support would be amazing for that. But yeah, thank you so much to all of our followers, subscribers, all the comments you get on YouTube, and if you're listening to the podcast on any of the platform, so like Spotify or Apple Podcast, please give it a rating or leave us a review. Obviously, don't feel inclined to do so, but these kind of things really do help the podcast grow and get it pushed out there and get it noticed. So if you are a fan and you are a listener, we really do appreciate you listening. But if you can do those sorts of things, that would really help us out, and we'd really appreciate it. Anything from you, Lee?
Yeah, I think we forgot to mention at the end of our last episode that we are still very much interested in hearing listeners' own stories.
Correct.
It'd be really great if you had any stories of your own about Fort Paull.
Yeah. If you've been to Fort Paull before, and
a follow up, but any, absolutely any, we're really interested. If it's a short story, if it's a longer story, we'd love to feature it, and we would always treat it with the respect that it deserves.
100%. We've always said it doesn't matter how long or short it is, we just want to hear your experiences. And as you quite rightly said there, Lee, even if it's one that you've had at Fort Paull, we did have a few comments from people when we'd said we were planning to visit here, and they were excited to hear it. So if you've been here and you had an experience, please share it. We'd love to hear it. And that can be done by emailing us at btvpodcaststories@gmail.com. So that's nice and easy, or you can just direct message us on Facebook or on Instagram. Either of those is absolutely fine. We've got no problems with taking your messages on there. And yeah, thank you to everyone who has shared a story. And if you've got one, you can share it anonymously if you're worried about people thinking you're crazy or whatever. I don't friggin' know. But yeah, if you're a little hesitant to share your story, you can do it anonymously, and we will respect your privacy. So, but I think that is it. Thank you very much, Mike, for joining us. It's been a pleasure as always. We've got a couple of more things that we're hoping to do in the coming year, and you know, we're hoping that maybe you can join us for those, and definitely want to get you back on for your stories regarding underground tunnels, because I bet you've got some great stories.
I think next time though, it should be in a nice warm studio.
Yeah.
Yes, we're not doing it in an underground tunnel. I can tell you that much.
I mean, it's lovely. It's nice to be here. It's great to be here, and it's it's been fun. We've had a fun night.
Yeah. But I'm definitely sick of being cold now.
Yeah, it's freezing. The temperature really has dropped.
It really has. So yeah, but yeah, let's get this wrapped up and let's get fucking out of here. So I'm with Nick Taylor now, and he is
one of the museum directors of Fort Paull.
Fantastic. So obviously we've heard everything about what Fort Paull was and its history, but what is Fort Paull now?
So me and the other Nick Moore, we took on the site in May 24, and it had been abandoned since around 2019, as they were trying to turn it into a caravan site, which the planning failed for. And then that's when me and Nick got together and we decided that let's have a bash at reopening the fort as what it was in years gone by.
Which was?
It's a heritage site / event space.
Okay.
So it's been like that for 20 years.
Right.
So I think it was originally opened in 99, 2000, and then it closed in 2019. Was closed until 2024 in theory when we took it on.
Right.
So there was a lot of overgrowth, a lot of weeds, a lot of foliage. So we tidied up the site, instilled some health and safety measures between May 24 and September 24, and then we had our very first event in September 24, which was a classic American car show. And then we slotted in a Christmas market in the November.
Oh wow, I bet that would have been pretty cool actually.
I think where we sort of tried to pat ourselves on the back a little bit was the state of the site when we took it on in the May, and getting it into public friendly, getting people back through the gates in September in such a short period of time. We did so much work just to even get to that point. And then last year was our first full event season, which went down pretty well, and we had an eclectic mix of events ranging from car shows, steam rallies, fireworks night, 1940s weekend, multi-period, Napoleonic, Civil War.
Wow.
We tried to reach a wider audience as possible to try and get people back through the gates. And when it was open previously, it was also open as a museum/heritage site whilst running events alongside it.
Right.
But what we've tried to do is try and provide as much value as possible by only opening 4 events. It's very difficult to, I mean, don't get me wrong, it's a cool place and we love the site, but not everyone sadly is interested in just the site as it is. So if we've got an event on that's, a £5 to come in, they're not only getting to see an event that's cool, but then they can also look around the site and learn about the history and see all the other sides of things too.
Yeah, no, I get that.
So we've tried to provide as much value as possible so that people will come back to more and more events. The more people we get through the gates, the stronger the likelihood is that we can keep this site going for, hopefully that it'll outlive us.
Yeah, well, I certainly hope so. I mean, it would have been an absolute tragedy and a travesty if it had become a caravan park site, in my opinion, really.
Yeah, I mean, I'm on the fence, because if that was the only way that it was going to be saved, then there is an investment into the site, and then the fort, it lives on in a different way, and money is reinvested back into the site. However, the way that it's used as now, I think is a lot better. Yeah,
I think it's more befitting of its history, isn't it? I think.
Yeah. Because it can be enjoyed as it is, whilst also running events as well. Yeah. So, sadly we can't do a 1940s weekend every weekend.
No.
As much as we'd like to, we have to do other events that aren't necessarily historically related to the site, but as long as you get people through the door, people spending money here, that allows us to reinvest back into the site, and also it gets younger eyes onto history. Because at some point the mantle from me and other Nick is going to have to be passed on to someone else.
Exactly.
And hopefully, so Nick Moore, who I run the site with, he has been coming here since he was 12, 13. So he's loved this site for a very, very long period of time. So he's had an interest in the site for 20 years. So if we can get somebody that's 13, 14 now, in 20 years time, and they have an opportunity to take on this site, because we've had enough, then then that's great. Then that's, bringing younger eyes onto the site, and then going, oh, this is really cool. Yeah, I want to be involved in this some way, shape or form. Well, even in the future.
That's it. I mean, even if it plants that seed in that way where they might not have been back ever since that time they went as the kid, but then they hear that it's going to sort of just be forgotten and abandoned, and then they think, no, that place was really cool. I want to take that opportunity.
Yeah.
Even if it just plants that seed that,
exactly.
They don't have to be regular visitors of a place and love it that they want to be here all the time, but even if they just see it and go, in 20 years time, God, what a shame that would be, because I loved it when I went, you know, or it was really interesting or whatever. And it's a great place. I mean, I can't lie, I had never even been to the place until I approached you to ask if you'd be happy for us to come to do our thing here. And looking around and being up and down the place,
It's mega.
Incredible.
Yeah. And funnily enough, so I moved here. So I've been living here for nearly 3 years now, and I had never been to the site before that point.
Yeah.
And I'm local, and I had never been before. And I came initially to just do some groundskeeper work and some security while the planning was going through to be turned into a caravan site. And then when the planning failed, like at that point I'd been here a few months, and I'd already fairly well settled in and was like, oh, I love this place. And to go from never being before to then have an opportunity to turn this into my whole life, which it is pretty much now, I was like, oh, I'm going to grab that with both hands and I'm going to have a bash at that. And to be engulfed with that history in such a short period of time. Like, this is my home now.
Yeah.
It's not just me trying to salvage some piece of history. This is me trying to salvage my home and make sure that it doesn't go to rack and ruin again.
I mean, before we move back into the realms of the paranormal, but I presume its jurisdiction sits within East Riding of Yorkshire, is it?
It is, yeah.
Do you think they can do more to signpost this place and celebrate this place? Do you think they could do more, or do you think they've done a fair job?
I think they've been pretty cool, to be fair.
Oh, decent, that's good.
As far as councils go, they've been really helpful.
Oh, good.
So they've been on board with us from day one, as have a large swathe of the population, local businesses. You know, we've had a tremendous amount of support from lots of different areas where, you know, at the end of the day, we took a massive punt. And there was just two of us with a couple of spades and a couple of brushes, and that was it. And then when we re-announced to the general public that we were reopening it as it was, then we couldn't get enough help from people.
Good.
So volunteers wise, we have an incredible team, and realistically, without them, this site wouldn't exist.
Yeah.
It wouldn't operate, it wouldn't run. And we've got a very, very small team. They are cracking. Same with local businesses. Same with the general public. Yeah, it's just, it makes the hard work worthwhile knowing that you're doing something for the right reasons, for the right people.
Yeah, and that you're doing it with the right people.
And doing it with the right people.
Quick shout out to your team then. Who are there?
So we've got Paul, who does most of our groundswork.
Yep.
So all the cutting back.
Nice.
So then we have Janet and Trev, who run the shop, and Trevor also helps out with groundwork. We've got Sarah, Mercy, Laura, Sarah's kids, Mac and Ian, and they help us out with the bar work. So we've got a really mixed team that can do different bits and bats.
You got a nice sizable team as well, haven't you, really?
It's just big enough.
Yeah.
Like,
you could always do an extra pair of hands, couldn't you?
Yeah, it's we just about manage, but everyone knows what they're doing. We can rely on everyone to do their job, and we get on so well.
Brilliant.
You know, we've got, I would say, a team. It's more of a family now, and we've built this over the last couple of years, and everyone wants to see it be successful. And at the end of the day, our team that volunteers, they do it for free. You know, like, and they graft, like they really, really well. Like, busy long weekend. So these are really long days. So we're starting, 8 o'clock in the morning, and then we're not leaving until the bars close on the night.
Wow.
And then we're doing that the following day. So
It's commitment.
it is, and to have the group of people around us that are willing to work all of those hours for free to make sure that this never closes its gates again, I can't ask for any more.
It's perfect. It's perfect. So finally then, out of all of the things you may or may not have experienced here, I don't know how many personal experiences you've had with the paranormal yourself, but of those that you may have had,
Yep.
what's the one where you can go, okay, I can't explain that, and that really did freak me out?
So we would predominantly use the bar for our sort of meeting area. We'd go and have drinks in there. You know, if we've been working all day, and it's always nice and cold in there, which in summer is great, winter not so much. And myself and Nick were sat in the back of the bar room, and we both heard a woman talk over us, and there was nobody else there. So we both stopped talking, we both turned around, and we was like, we both heard that, didn't we? And we was like, yeah. And funnily enough, I was chatting to Nick earlier on as well, and he was in here one night and the projector fell off. I don't know why I'm pointing, because I'm being...
No, it's okay. It's okay. It helps you articulate sometimes.
Yeah.
I do it. So it just fell off like the wall.
There's a ledge where we had the projector. So the projector was up there for the 1940s weekend, I believe. So we had just some background projector stuff playing, and the projector is on a stone ledge, and said projector fell onto floor.
And it's stuff like that where it's like, why did it fall now? You know, like, why?
Yeah.
And I never understand when stuff like that happens, but that with the woman's voice, I mean...
It was clear as day.
Was you able to sort of pick out what it said, or was it because you was already talking, you couldn't hear what they said, you just heard the voice?
We just heard a female voice talking, say, over us. We just heard a female voice. But we both then stopped talking and then looked and went, "Did you hear that?" Yes.
Fucking hell.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah, well, I mean, of all the things that we've heard about, like the paranormal activity here, I can believe it for a second, you know. And that, me and Lee have talked about this in previous episodes, but to hear like a voice that's a very clicks, bangs, and things like that. You can rationalise them all you want,
Yes.
but a voice that's human, isn't it?
It is, and when there's nobody else there,
it's unmistakable.
Yeah, it is a voice, and when two people hear a female voice, it's indistinguishable, and you know that you have just heard a voice.
Yeah, 100%.
And if there's no female around, and there's just you two there,
yeah,
then.
And you know, for those who haven't been or whatever, like you're far off the road, aren't you? There's nothing behind you because, well, we're on the estuary there.
Yeah.
So it's not like you've got passing traffic, someone walking the dog or anything.
And we were inside an old ammunition storage place. So it's pretty thick walls.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
The likelihood of the sound travelling from... Once those doors are shut, nobody would be able to hear us having this conversation outside in there.
No.
And we were sat in the back room.
Yeah. Well, that's what makes this place so good for ghost hunting, is that it's because it's so isolated and you don't get that sound contamination, which a lot of people complain about when they're investigating sort of residential properties and things like that, or even just old buildings within the town. You've always got the risk of cars going by, trucks going by, buses going by, people walking by and just talking.
Yeah.
But this is so isolated, isn't it?
There can, if in a residential area, there can be external influence into an investigation.
Yeah.
But if we stop talking for a second,
it's nothing.
It's just quiet.
Yeah.
And more so when you go into the scarier underground areas within the fort, it's even quieter.
Yep.
And the likelihood of external influence there is very, very slim. So,
without scaring yourself shitless tonight, would you say this place is haunted?
I would say so, yeah. I think through our few personal experiences, but also the amount of paranormal teams that have been here and picked up activity, explainable or not, yes.
That'll do me. Well, it's been a pleasure, Nick, and thank you so much for letting us in for this, this fantastic episode. And I'd strongly encourage anybody who hasn't been to Fort Paull, who is local to it or not, come check it out. It's absolutely fantastic. And yeah, thank you so much for your time again, Nick. Really appreciate it. As the wind moves across the Humber and the walls of Fort Paull fall silent once again, it's hard not to wonder how much history still lingers here. For centuries, this fort stood watching the shoreline, a place built for war, isolation and defence. Soldiers passed through its corridors, families lived lives within them, and countless people spent nights here listening to sounds carried on the cold air from the river beyond. And perhaps some of them never truly left. Tonight, alongside Mike Covell, we've explored the history, the legends, and the experiences that continue to surround one of Hull's most infamous paranormal locations. From shadowy sightings and unexplained noises, to the strange atmosphere so many visitors describe the moment they step inside, Fort Paull remains a place where history and mystery seem permanently intertwined. Whether you believe hauntings are the result of restless spirits, residual energy, psychology, or something science still cannot explain, there's no denying that certain places leave an impression on us, and Fort Paull is undoubtedly one of them. Because perhaps the strangest thing about places like this isn't what people claim to have seen, but how many people across its generations tell the same stories, the same footsteps, the same figures, the same feeling that they are not alone. So if you ever find yourself standing beside the old fort after dark, listening to the wind echo through those empty corridors, just remember, some places never truly fall silent. Until next time, keep questioning, keep listening, and keep looking beyond the veil.